Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, HR during the current crisis, changing strategies and managing remote work. My name is Andreea Groenendijk-Deveau. I'm the co-founder and VP of Communications for KindLink. About KindLink, we are a technology platform supporting companies with all their CSR needs, from volunteering and fundraising to impact and sustainability goals measurement. We also offer that same platform for free to nonprofits for them to manage their activity, fundraise, engage with potential supporters, and increase their general transparency in the space. We have two amazing guests today, Toni Georgieva from Kapten and Kerry-Anne Kerry-Anne Fennelly from Digital. Before I move over to them for them to present themselves and tell you a little bit about their companies and about what they do, we have an option for you to ask questions. It's on your screen. It's at the bottom of your screen. Please ask questions. Please feel free to also introduce yourselves to the other attendees. Make sure you give your name and your LinkedIn profile. That would be ideal so that you guys can connect with each other. And we'll go back and forth between what we're discussing and your questions as your questions are coming in. So shall I start with Toni? Toni, please tell us a little bit about yourself and about Kapten.
Thank you, Andrea. My name is Toni. I am from Bulgaria originally, and I have been working with Kapten for nearly a year now. So Kapten is an app-based service. We provide people with private hire vehicles from point A to point B. We have been running in London since May last year, and we are part of a larger group. Hopefully we could ride through this crisis together with the help of everyone involved. And prior to that, I have been the HR business partner in a fintech, and even prior to that, I've been mostly in recruitment. So my career path has been in recruitment, HR business partnering, and now into the HR manager role at Kapten.
Fantastic. Kerry-Anne, we're so jealous of your wonderful surroundings. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Digital.
I was going to say it's a good job you can't see the whole garden because I am looking at weeds as well. But hi, I'm Kerry Fennelly. I'm a People Operations Lead for Digital. In a nutshell, we help other companies thrive by unlocking their potential of technology and their people. So we do that by helping guide them in action-driven strategies. We totally teach them as well because we believe in upskilling experiences to help them foster more productive teams. And clearly we also build, because that is our specialism, to help them deliver better digital products faster. Like Toni, I have been working in Digital for nearly a year. Prior to that, I've got quite a long background, about 20 years in HR. So I've worked for some big global financial organizations. I've also worked in manufacturing companies, a whole range from HR business partner to HR change partner, you name it. I've probably had every title, but I think the main thing is I've always worked in a role that either serves or fosters relationships with people.
Fantastic. So we have a wonderful pool of experience in the HR sector. So why don't we dive right in? Obviously, I think it's clear now that the crisis will change certain things, maybe a lot of things in the field. What do you think the main KPIs that will need changing are? So, and before we answer that, why don't we go through what the main HR KPIs are in general? You know, cost per hire, turnover, absence, job satisfaction, performance, job engagement. Feel free to add on, and maybe we stop on each one and discuss the ones that will that are safe and the ones that will need tweaking in the coming months.
Cool. Maybe I could start.
Please.
Just looking at what you've outlined already. Of course, we have to look at all of that. But first, I was thinking about this, what would be the first thing that I'm going to look at is what is the overall impact of the changes to our business. So we, as HR thought partners, we really need to understand overall how has our business has been in fact impacted by the changes, and what does that mean to the people. In my eyes, I would be putting the human element first, but obviously every single decision that we make, whether it's the decisions that we make immediately or the ones that we are part of the midterm reevaluations or the long-term planning, the human element would be the first and foremost element I'm going to be looking at. And I think I've seen that across other companies as well, which is fantastic. Focusing on the human element is quite prominent right now. And at the same time, of course, we have to balance and look at managing cost. As I said, cost per hire, especially on the recruitment side. A lot of companies right now may have to freeze recruitment, so that is a KPI that is completely out of the door. Onboarding new starters. And what is the satisfaction of that? That was one of our KPIs that will have to be evaluated and kind of adjusted to the new circumstances and the new situation. And a lot of the engagement and employee relations, learning and development, a lot of this that obviously when I myself work in a startup, a lot of that comes under my umbrella and under my strategy planning. So that any of that is changing. What is safe, I would say, is that we continue to work on existing employees and their well-being, and kind of look into learning and development a little bit more in terms of contingency planning further down the line. And we can get into that in a little bit more detail later on.
Mm-hmm. Kerry-Anne?
Yeah, I think first of all, I think maybe taking maybe just a different approach is okay. We are still working towards a strategy. We still have KPIs, but I think the deliverables will almost be the same. But it's how do we stand back and look at how we can approach those deliverables differently? Because at the end of the day, we still need to meet those deliverables, but actually the path that we may take as an individual or as a HR person or as a technical role, how can we look at these things outside the box? Because most of the deliverables can be approached differently. The fact is we are used to doing things in a certain way. We need to stand back, we need to look at actually how can we achieve the end result, but in a different approach.
Can you give us an example, Kerry-Anne?
Yes, so I mean, again, working, I am lucky to work for a company that obviously is digital. In terms of learning, our KPIs probably won't be too badly affected in terms of learning. We have a whole host of remote learning, still we've got classroom, virtual learning, that type of thing. So I appreciate it may look different because it will probably look more 100% like that rather than the instructor led, but will our strategy for learning change as a result of that, or how successful we will be on our strategy? Probably not, but the approach we will take is a different approach than what we'd set out at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm. On KPIs such as turnover or absence, for example, those are likely to slightly change right now, aren't they? Because we kind of know where each employee is. Mm-hmm. So it might make it slightly better for companies. But when it comes to hiring, in-person interviews tend to be quite important. Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of people want to have a feel for the candidate. Will it be easy for those who are used to recruiting people in a certain way to switch to, of course, there are interviews that are being done online via video from a distance, and that's part of it. But will it be difficult for those that are so used to sort of getting a real feel for the person when meeting them face to face to switch to just being digital?
I don't know, Toni, you want to go on this one? I'll start. We do a lot of interviews, obviously digital now. We still have an element of face-to-face, absolutely. I totally agree with you, Andreea, that face-to-face and getting a real feel for a person, both as an interviewer or an interviewee, is really important to both parties. In this period that we may be almost, if we want to recruit, we almost maybe forced down that wholly digital path because of obviously the extremes that we're all facing in the world now. will it be as successful? I would hope so. I think, you know, the people who interview, the recruiters, are they as capable of, if you like, singling out the best people for the role? I would absolutely think, yes, they've got, you know, the experience there. I appreciate the face-to-face presence isn't a great place not to have, but I think we'll have to face a future, a short-term future, hopefully, where we may have to kind of just lose that for the time being.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And actually, I would say this is a fantastic opportunity to test out a few things here and there and just try to be more creative as much as possible. Of course, it depends on the culture of the company that you're working on. But what I did kind of wanted to share in terms of what can be done on the recruitment and selection side is there's so many ways that we could, for example, be more inclusive in our recruitment. Now is the time to look at our careers web pages and share more information about, let's say, a virtual office store, or share stories from our existing employees working from home and what their day-to-day looks like, or give an idea of someone who is to join us right now, what their day-to-day would look like. Have interviews with the managers. This is all kind of, now is the opportunity to do that. Now that is the perfect time to do it. At the same time, it's also a great time to review the scorecard. If you're using any scorecards in your interviews, it's a great chance for people to actually streamline communication, because probably many of you know that recruitment sometimes updates are given on the way to somewhere to important people. So it's good that you have certain channels, and then all communication around recruitment is more intentional and perhaps a little bit more transparent in that way. So now you'll be looking for skills such as reliability and skills such as being able to manage a project completely remotely, and being able to communicate as well as ever over digital channels. So the scorecard, as I said, would be amended. The way people interview would be amended. So all of that is an opportunity in my eyes. I think that will be a fantastic time for people and companies to change their processes. And I actually think that this kind of change would add a lot to the process, not take away anything from it. But if people are not used to it at the moment, is the obviously the HR or HR business partners and recruiters and talent management teams to educate. Now is the perfect time to do that.
And what about the companies? They'll probably have to put their backs into some sort of training for these particular things. For example, managing a project remotely, like you mentioned, it might take a bit of training. Do you feel that companies will need to put in a significant investment to sort of overhaul these procedures and the way they do things? Or will this come naturally and they'll have to change a little bit here, a little bit there, and essentially just use the resources that they already have?
I think probably, Andrea, it's a mixture of both. And it definitely depends where your company is in terms of digital technology, etc. But I think as well, before we started, Toni and I were just talking before the webinar started, we've got a whole host of expertise on LinkedIn, other network channels that are actually offering lots and lots of resources for free. So I think for a start, if a company is looking at actually making a course digital, I think first of all, you go out to those types of network and say, hey, can anyone help me? Because often, you know, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are lots of people at the moment that are offering lots of great services, great courses, great thinking really to help us all through this. And I think that's kind of a very big positive from what we're going through at the moment is I do see a lot more sharing. So I think, yes, I think companies will need to adapt in order to still benefit their employees by giving them learning. But I don't necessarily see them starting from scratch. It's certainly in some content anyway, because I think there are people out there who are more than happy to share information.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go on, Toni.
I just wanted to add on to what Kerry-Anne was saying in terms of your L&D program for the year ideally would have been mapped out by now. And it doesn't have to be a drastic change, not at all. And just to add on, I agree with everything you said, just to add on one final thing, just look internally as in you probably have a ton of expertise internally that can be shared with the team. It doesn't have to cost anything apart from someone's a couple hours a day to prepare something and share with the rest of the team. It doesn't have to be a full 6 weeks course or anything that is as massive, but it's also, as we were discussing earlier, people are looking for purpose in these times, and sharing knowledge and providing and upskilling others. It's a great purpose for them to have.
I think just to add to that as well, what we've seen in And Digital, we've been working remotely for the last 3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, 3.5 weeks, perhaps. Time's going by fast. But I think what we're seeing is that our employees are sharing a lot in between with each other. So clearly, we all have a day job, but people have personal lives where they may have done learning, and now we're actually seeing them say, hey guys, I'm going to do a remote session on X, Y, and Z. Who wants to come and listen? So I think we're getting internal sharing as well, where potentially you may not have created a platform where people could kind of bring those things in. But I think again, it's the whole sharing thing. I think we're seeing it externally, but I do think we're seeing it internally as well, and that's fantastic for everyone.
Yes, and does it, sorry, just to follow up on something Toni was saying earlier, does it take a company to be of a certain size to be able to be nimble and move quickly, or is it easier for startups? I guess I'm asking, or is it easier for big companies who have big HR departments, have the resources and essentially everything they need to immediately sort of adapt to this change?
I think it's a bit of both. Definitely easier to be much more agile and nimble when you're a startup and you've been running for a year. And then, as I said, there's a lot that we can change and add and adjust in terms of our plan for the year. But at the same time, it's now is the time to have larger companies shake things up and move things around as well, because that might be the push that everyone needs. Maybe I'll just give an example of if you don't have a learning management system internally that is up and running, there's a simple thing like Google says that you can create for people to share learning and to create their own learning and to share. So that is the benefit of working in a startup. We can create something as simple as that and just share it with people. There's different channels that we can share. In terms of establishing already established process and how these would be changed in a larger company, I myself think would be a little bit more challenging. But at the same time, as Kerry-Anne has said, and judging from my conversations with HR people across the UK, I think everyone is changing. Even notoriously slow institutions in the past are changing their processes so drastically in terms of how what they would apply in terms of next steps and how technologies are becoming part of their processes. That for me has been a great thing to see. So hopefully it will be a great experience for both startups and, well, as great as it can be, and a good experience for us in terms of change and adapting to that change.
And Kerry-Anne?
I totally agree. I think yes, for some of the bigger companies, they've got a bigger workforce, so potentially they've got the resources, like you mentioned, they've got the resources at hand that could start to mobilise some of these things quickly. I think probably some of the restrictions in a big company, thinking of some of the financial services I've worked for, is maybe the constraints of the business for the individuals themselves to think outside the box because they've always done something a certain way. So I appreciate, but like Toni said, I think we're faced with two dilemmas. Regardless of the type of company or size of company that we have, we're faced with either we can sit still and wait for things to finish, which could be a long time, or we can start to make changes and approach things differently. And I think, on the latter one, I think in this period of uncertainty, we don't know how long it's going to go on for. I think most companies would be silly to sit back and wait for things to end. I think, we have probably all in our roles, whatever you do, over the last couple of weeks been almost forced to think differently. And again, I think that we'll see more of that, and I think we'll come out of it successfully as working remotely the best we can, as well as being in the office. So I do think we've got a real positive journey to go on to have a complete balance when we get to the end of this.
Fantastic. Before we move on to the next question, may I remind everyone that there's a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. If you want to ask our guests any questions, please feel free. Introduce yourselves, network with each other, add your LinkedIn profile so that you know we're one big family here, and we want everybody to be a part of our ecosystem. Back to what we were saying. Panic tends to essentially set in quite quickly. And I've been listening to, I've been reading a lot of articles, I've been listening to a lot of webinars with startups, trying to figure out where people are and how they're reacting. And Toni, you said, yeah, they should have their strategy sort of already in place now. They should have probably started on it a few weeks ago. But if they haven't, if they're still thinking, I don't know what to do, will this affect me? How will it affect me? Mm-hmm. What are the logical steps that they should go through right now? Let's say they're at T0, they haven't done anything yet. They were caught off guard. Okay, everybody might be using you know, a video chat system with their teams. But if you were to sort of sit down and put pen to paper on what the logical steps should be, what would those be? And obviously the question is for both of you.
Thanks. Well, that is a question that we ask ourselves as well.
So let's do that exercise together.
Yes. So again, I can only speak from the perspective of a startup, working in a startup. So the first thing that I had to do is kind of truly understand the impact of the business, and that will tell me what we can and what we can't do. The second thing that we had to understand once again is what does that mean to the employees? Because whether I was thinking or not, or taking my time, people who were here, I don't want to say stuck in the UK, but people's emotional well-being started being affected. So a lot of people wanted to just leave and be with their families. So those immediate decisions, we had to counteract that and have a plan in terms of if the majority of the people either went on sick leave or went back home because they don't feel comfortable here, staying here for the duration of the lockdown. What do we do then? So those were the first discussions with managers. At the same time, the next thing that we have to do is look at all the HR workflows that we have and how would those be affected. And as Kerry-Anne said earlier, look at the KPIs, stick to most of them, just work on the deliverables on those with the leadership team. And obviously the one of the most important things for us to understand is that how do we then continue to be aligned with our values and continue to be the ethical employer that we want to be, continue to work on keeping employee engagement, continue to work on very clear communication strategy, because as things are developing on a daily basis, we do not want to be the employer that comes in and says this is what's going to happen now. So we do want to be as transparent as clear, and these were the steps that we would follow. Again, from a much larger company and workforce, I appreciate that this would take a lot more time and planning to do. For us, we just had to look at the workforce that we have. That includes obviously freelancers, part-time, full-timers, and continuously be prepared and be informed. I think that would be the first thing that people have to do. Have as much information as possible and be prepared. From an HR perspective as well, it's good to be prepared from an employment law side as well. Mm-hmm. So get some of that advice.
And on that, sorry, just a follow-up question. Do you think employment law is likely to change?
It has already changed from what I could see on the public forums and on the government website. But I appreciate that it would some regulations will be changed.
Okay, Kerry-Anne, that same previous question.
Yeah, I think it's echoing really what Toni said. So there's two things, isn't there? As anybody in the business, as a HR person, I think it's important to understand the business challenges. So what are the normal challenges in a situation like this are clearly cost. That's the pivotal one. But also it's about how can we still deliver our business? We still have clients. how can we be productive and still deliver to what we've agreed. So I think that they are the key business ones. Clearly, then we need to look at actually what is the impact of those two things. If we make any changes to those two things, what is the impact on people? I'm very, very fortunate to work for an organisation that one of our absolutely pivotal ethics is people first. And you know, we have been in the last 3 weeks. We've been working remotely. We've been talking about putting people on furlough and everything else. But I think the key thing is actually how will it impact people. Toni mentioned about people's well-being. I think as a company, we all have a duty of care to our people. I think that has to be heightened now. A lot of people aren't great at working remotely because of mental health, well-being, and their own physical well-being. So I think as a HR person, we do have to really focus during this time on how we kind of limit some of the risk involved with that in terms of well-being. But also as well, it's about every business decision. It's about absolutely looking at actually what will the impact on people be. Now, some of those messages will not be nice messages. We've got to be, realistic in this. They won't always necessarily be the best for people. However, from a company perspective, we have got to protect our company and we've got to protect our clients. And in all of that, especially protect our people where we can.
Yes, and you're making a brilliant point, the mental well-being angle. We're not meant to be isolated. We're social beings, and we can take care of it ourselves up to a point, but then where should the employer step in? What is it that they should be doing? If you can tell us whether you guys are doing something at the moment, how do you sort of engage with your employees on that particular point?
So we engage with them. So we have got virtual chat rooms where we talk about mental well-being, where we deliver either courses or tutorials on about how best place you are to protect your own mental health and physical health as well. So we've got a whole host and range of those things that we use, but also as well, it's things like we've set up virtual coffees with people. We've got a really good at midday. We normally have some kind of, I want to say a game, but it might be a quiz, it might be a virtual game. So again, how do we working in a remote environment at the moment, bring some fun in? I think fun's really still, if not more necessary in the workplace now. So how can you have virtual fun without all being in a room together? So we're really concentrating on that. We've done an awful lot as well in terms of the well-being of parents at the moment. I'm not saying that that's the only kind of population that we look after. Clearly we look after everyone, but also parents are going through a really strange, different life at the moment, with homeschooling, with still keeping their jobs and doing their work. So actually, what else can we do to kind of almost alleviate some of the pressure in their lives as well? So we've done a lot of things about actually having those conversations to say, can we support them by adding other people into their workforce, if you like, to help share the work out more. We've done some really good things about, about sharing, because we've got a whole mass of people out there who've got, I know one person who's set up a little tuck shop to help teach her children about maths and buying and things like that. So we've got loads of guidelines about people sharing about what they're doing with their children during the day to kind of alleviate that. So it's looking at every single angle, which seems to be growing on a day-to-day basis. But I do think wherever we can reach out to people, think outside the box to still engage with people, not just on a normal one-to-one, but more than ever. I think that has to be a focus for a business, and it has to be increased engagement. We have obviously come into the furlough world now, so the job retention scheme, which clearly impacts how we can, as HR professionals, engage with people who are on furlough. So that is something else that we need to work around and think about, because at the end of the day, we want people to return to work with fantastic well-being, whether that be mental or physical.
That makes perfect sense. Toni, if you want to add anything.
For us, again, due to our size, it was a little bit easier to have a mental health strategy from last year, where we did have mental health training on site for the entire company and mental health training sessions for the managers specifically. So we kind of had a bit of a foundation build up in that case. Now we'll continue with the mental health training. Obviously that will be online. We have the first one next week, so I'm not sure how that would work. And I hope we can evaluate the effectiveness of that webinar as well. In addition to that, obviously this is again part of the foundation. We have the managers trained, we have mental health training and the stress at the workplace training as well. And we do have an employee assistance program, which is again as our employer's duty to care. It's what we have done in the past. Now going forward, and again, I'm not putting this on the managers, and not every company would like to do this, but we do have at least once a day check-in with manager, and once a week at least, again, team check-in. Not just on a productivity level, but these are entirely different check-ins to just ask how are you doing? How is that happening? Again, this could work in a startup. It may not work everywhere. In addition to that, we very similar to Kerry-Anne, we're trying to have team breakfasts, trying to have tea time, pub quizzes, all of that, just to kind of boost morale a little bit more. But the most crucial thing I would say is how we communicate to employees and not to leave anyone in the dark. Fair enough. Things are changing pretty much on an hourly basis, even sometimes, but it's our responsibility as HR leaders to kind of align communication altogether, so no one is in the dark, because that creates a lot of anxiety and just kind of creates an opportunity for people to not be able to focus on anything else but is my job safe. So as soon as we have confirmations, or as soon as we have more information, it's important that we communicate that to people as transparently as open. And if you don't know, we just have to say that we don't know, but we're working towards finding out. So to me, that would be the main thing. Just in this particular moment is about clear communication that does not leave a lot of space for people to kind of
wonder
where they're standing.
Yeah. And on employee engagement and well-being, CSR is such a big part of that. What a company does to make the world a better place is such a big part of employees essentially being proud and loving to work for that company. What should companies keep doing on that topic? Are they still doing things? Should they continue to be engaged in the space? And I'll give you an example. At KindLink, we created a special area in our opportunities marketplace to connect corporates with charities fighting the COVID-19 crisis, and we are seeing a tremendous amount of interest. Obviously, the charities need support, and the corporates are looking to provide that support to them, and there are individuals that are looking to provide support. So what should companies be doing, especially since now it's a bit more difficult to volunteer, isn't it? You can't have a team of 60 people going out there and fighting any crisis, because nobody obviously is allowed to be outside. So what can you tell me on that point?
Me first, or I think it's a great point. I think there are, like you just mentioned, Andrea, there are ways and means of still continuing to volunteer. So I would say that our company, nothing's changed on that. So we are still, we still encourage people to volunteer. We've got an awful lot of people who are volunteering for the NHS, where you can go do drop-offs of shopping for people who can't get out, vulnerable people. I know today somebody shared something about volunteering. If you have a 3D printer, you can volunteer to make masks and things. So there's lots of different types of volunteering, I think, at the moment. But definitely as a company, we are encouraging that probably more than ever now, because with people being at home, it's about also as well making them feel as if they are adding value to communities that need help at the moment. And I think that's become it's always an important part of somebody's working life, because we do as a company, we do absolutely encourage people to volunteer. I think what we're doing at the moment is seeing so much help that is required that our people can actually help with. We are definitely proactively encouraging people, but to do those types of things, because I think all of us as human people, as human nature, is that if we do help someone, it is a good feeling, it's a positive feeling. We feel as if we've added value to someone, and those types of emotions are important at this time in the world.
Agreed. And just to add on to that, apart from what our company is doing to help in the COVID-19 crisis, it's really, really exciting to see how many of creative ideas are coming from within the team, which is fantastic. And once again, we also recognize that in people just coming together around the cause and helping each other out and rallying more people around them, which is great. Of course, we want them to be safe where possible, as much as possible. But the creativity that is coming from within the team and the good stories that we hear on a daily basis, that is amazing.
Can you give some examples, or are you allowed to?
So at the moment, first of all, as I said, the one example that I gave is people volunteering their time to create training for others. That includes everyone. So this is kind of free training, free content for everyone, from people who are experts in the field. The other ones are mainly to do with volunteering in food delivering as well, shops that are just kind of stacking up in East London.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, shall we break a little bit and have a look at the questions that have come through? Sophia is asking, if you have a team that are furloughed, how are you still going to engage with people through training?
Okay, so we started our kind of furlough process. So we're in our first day of furlough today for a number of our employees. How we will engage with them on training, because again, there are restrictions on how we can engage as a company with our employees on furlough. So some of the thinking about behind that, we've set up almost an opportunity channel, if you like, on our community. We use Slack mainly. So we've set up a channel of opportunities. So what we'll be doing on there is sharing any training and letting people volunteer to, obviously, if they want to upskill while they're on furlough, that is the place that they would go to. So if you like, we are, signposting that as an opportunity to find out any upskilling things that we might be having for people to sign up to that if they want to. Because I think the whole thing about furlough is it's voluntary engagement for upskilling rather than mandatory in any form. So we'll certainly use that. There'll be opportunities of all varying kinds. I've seen some virtual technology type seminars that have been posted on there today. Some of them are more, a lot less technical. So some people are saying, oh, I'm thinking about setting up like a storytelling class for my children. Would anyone like to help me do this type of thing? So I think it's about signposting where the opportunities are, but clearly as well keeping within your furlough regulations.
Exactly. For us, it's also optional. We don't want to kind of force any training on anyone on furlough. Yeah, entirely for us to share. There's opportunity there for additional training for everyone, but it's entirely optional.
Kerry-Anne, you touched upon something, employees and children. I mean, that has become a big part of their work life, hasn't it? You can't have a nanny, you can't send them to school. Therefore, an employer, has to sort of work around another part of an employee's life that has become incredibly prominent and has a bearing on their work life. Do you guys have anything in place for that right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I touched on it previously. We've had very, if you like, very practical discussions with our working parents, if you like. So the first step was to really understand what challenges they may be faced with. How could we then help them flex their day in order to do everything that's expected of them, both from a a homeschooling perspective, but also, you know, if they're working on a client, so still getting them, what element of productivity could we expect as well? So I think the realization for And Digital is, could they possibly, with everything else that's going on, be 100% productive as they were in the office, if you like, and children were at school? The answer in most cases was no. So it's about how can we flex their work? How can we flex their times of working, which, you know, was a lot easier to do, you know, and asking direct questions about how many hours a day do you honestly think you will be able to work for the company? Now, appreciate that right at the beginning, it was really difficult for some of those parents to answer that question. But as time has gone on, they've realised how difficult it can be with homeschooling. So we've had very, very honest conversations, and we've managed to be able to flex their workload or take workload off them. So some of the projects they may have been on that actually needed 100%, and now they could only do 25%. We've actually reallocated that to other people. I think it's having those honest discussions with people to absolutely understand what they can and what they can't do, but with also as well the caveat that at the end of the day, we need these to be still, you know, we still need them well physically and mentally. So although they may be able to, they may say, I can do 100%, actually to just keep checking in with them, because their view of doing 100% actually might not be realistic, and we need to kind of take steps to protect them and their well-being, and say, well, actually, do you know what, do 50%. If you do 50%, that's really helpful to the company, but also we know that your well-being will be protected as well. So it's honest conversations. I think that and then you can flex it accordingly.
And Toni, do you have anything to add to that, or?
In terms of what we can add, I agree 100% that it was on a case-by-case conversation, and it's more about, I hope at least that we've, every time we have managed to allow parents or people who are, or their spouse is a key worker, they have to be along with their children and work at the same time, to be non-apologetic about this at all, and just clearly state what they can and cannot do. With the plan B is someone else can be trained up and take off some of your work, which was obviously, it's really good to hear your work is not going to be dropped. Someone else can pick it up while we go through this together. So it's really important, as Kerry-Anne said, just to have that honest conversation as soon as possible, so we can plan.
And for the people that are not dealing with this particular issue, are they more productive? Let's put it this way, we all travel a little bit of, we spend a bit of time traveling to work. We don't have to do that right now. Now, it might be a bit more difficult for a lot of people to work from home because they don't have that energy and they don't have that adrenaline. But at the same time, a lot of people I've spoken to are saying, actually, I feel like I'm working a lot more, I'm getting a lot more things done. So do you have an overview of that yet?
I think so. I think if you even look at, I mean, if I look at myself personally, I miss being around people, because obviously my job is people, but equally there's a sense of my working pattern now is more organic. So I work almost, I mean, you'll always have deadlines and things that are kind of non-movable. So, you know, I guess you can't do everything that you want to in whatever hours you want. There'll always be constraints to that, but I'm a very morning person, so actually getting up and not having to commute or anything means that if I want to, I can start at 5 o'clock in the morning and do the majority of my work before, you know, into the early afternoon, because that I can organically almost decide what I am doing and when. Definitely. Am I eating healthier without all the biscuits and things in the office? Absolutely. Plus, we can't go out to the shops and buy them.
You don't have a stash? You don't have a stash at home?
No, I don't. The stash is gone. But no, I think so. From a personal point of view, my productivity has definitely increased. I think other people as well. It depends on the person and how they can quickly adapt into remote working, because it does take all of us different amounts of time. but I think it's a real good test of how can you split up your day to be more productive when it suits you, rather than what's being given to you to do, to go into the office. So people are saying to me, instead of commuting for an hour, I'm actually exercising. I don't normally get time to do that. So it's about encouraging them again with the ideas about, actually, you've now got different times. What would you like to do? Try it. If it works for you, you're still productive in your work, your mental and physical well-being is good, the company are happy that you're hitting your deadlines or whatever you need to do for the company, fine. There's no issue.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Absolutely agreed, especially on the HR side. Now I'm in charge of my own calendar. So this is really cool to see. And we're going to find out as well and evaluate the effectiveness of working from home very soon too. But it's more of already the anecdotal feedback that we get is, I have a better routine. I have more face time with my manager than I did before. It's really positive. Despite of some of the drawbacks, but there are quite a lot of positives in this.
And if we go to a more general perspective, and this ties in with a question we have from Della, she's saying, before this pandemic, there were very few companies that were open to having employees working remotely or in their own time. In their own time that would be more productive or convenient for them. Do you know if HR at many companies are now evaluating efficiency of working remotely so that this could become more acceptable in the future? So I think essentially we're asking, will part of this become the norm?
I hope it does. I certainly agree with where Della's coming from, because typically there was some organisations or industries that would never have even contemplated people working from home, and it's actually pushed them into trying that. So I'm hoping the positivity from this, and that people are productive, they are feeling well, and they are feeling in control of what they can do, what they can't do, when they do it best. I'm hoping that this does turn it on its head, if you like, to show companies that actually, remote working, the balance of remote working and office working, it can be as productive. I think the other element of that is, I think it's down to trust. We all work with people or have worked with people who, regardless of either if they're in the office, they will always do a little bit less work than everyone else. I'm sure that everybody can identify with someone like that. So actually, the people who have always worked hard will continue to work hard, even at home. So I think you'll always have people that, are typically not as productive as others. So whether they be in the workplace in the office, or actually at home, will they still be the same? Probably, but I think that's just human nature. But I do think it should hopefully turn everything on its head, and companies that were had less of an appetite for remote working, I would hope that now is a more positive appetite at the end of this.
I mean, it's hard to sort of ask this question because it's hard to sort of understand what's going on in the market. So I will try to phrase it as general as possible. Are people still hiring? Are companies still hiring? We're seeing things in the news about the likes of Tesco hiring 35,000 people. But in terms of general positions being filled, I'm also reading a lot of news that nobody's hiring, nobody's moving, everybody's put everything on hold. Do you have any signals? I'm not going to ask whether your own companies are necessarily hiring right now, but where do you see this sort of market in 3 months from now? And Akish has asked the question, how do you see onboarding of new staff taking place while we are in this crisis? So let's say companies will still be hiring. How do we onboard the new employees?
I can say that we've already started to do remote onboarding. So we had new starters for our new club in Edinburgh. So we have a 3-week, if you like, boot camp. and we switched everything to remote, and we've run one over the last few weeks, and a new one starts on Monday, and we've got really great comments back and feedback on that. So we have had to kind of be agile, be really thinking about actually what can we do remotely and what possibly can't be, because there are some elements of that, you know, of the boot camp that we can't, but what can we still offer? Because at the end of the day, a new starter coming into a company is really important, whether it's in the strange world we're living in at the moment where everything's locked down, or whether it was actually face to face. So we have turned that round. I think in terms of just the job market, if people notice, there's quite a lot of HR jobs there at the moment. I think practically that's because a lot of companies who don't have HR experience suddenly realise that they need it because of all the different government guidelines, etc. So I have seen a surge in some HR roles that have certainly been advertised out and about there. I think clearly, yeah, there's a surge in delivery jobs, Deliveroo and all of that, and the Tesco's, the supermarkets, etc. I think there will be key jobs. I can speak for my own company. There are key jobs that we still are recruiting for. So have we still got vacancies advertised? Yes, we have. But the realistic view is, if we do find the right person, will they be starting sooner rather than later? It will most probably be later. So I think some companies will still, because you work still at the end of this, we still need those specialisms. So it would be silly just to sit on it. But equally, I think, yeah, we will see a bit of a low recruitment drive at the moment. But certainly in some areas, such as the retail market, etc., we may see a surge as well.
Definitely.
Sorry, go on, Toni.
And not to forget that certain industries are booming right now in terms of the product or services they provide. So it's really important if people are looking for a job to look out and search for roles in those industries. And at the same time, when things start to pick up for everyone, it's important to kind of keep in mind that there's still going to be a skills shortage in 2 or 3 months' time. It's good to have a pipeline. From now, it's good. Onboarding remotely definitely can be done. Some elements will be lost, but some will be a little bit better. Some things will be a little bit easier, but it's important to invest in that, especially if you've decided to give this person an offer, onboard them. It's important to actually go the full length into making sure that they feel at home. Definitely possible. Definitely need to think about equipment. I think someone mentioned internet connection. All of that is really important. It's important to have all the tutorials. So anything, as you said, Kerry-Anne, booth camps, have that human interaction, whether in a peer group or assign a buddy, but absolutely possible. And you can definitely make people feel part of the company from this type of experience, and it's a positive experience overall. Someone is getting a new job in this uncertain times, so it's fantastic. But yeah, in 2 to 3 months time, it's important for us to have that plan as well. Is when we start picking up what will be the recruitment cost. So let's not wait until that. Let's have a bit of a pipeline from now.
I think we're getting close to the end of our webinar, so I have a final question again from Della. How can we also try to figure out how to help employees be more efficient and productive as they work remotely, and perhaps also evaluate what things are needed, such as equipment, good internet, etc. And on it, I will add, why don't we make a list of the things you've mentioned that you're using that might be free out there for people to use and other companies to use. So that's one of the main things that people can take away from our discussion, free things that they can apply onto their company's technology tools, whatever it is that you can recommend for them to sort of get started if they haven't already, or continue on their path tomorrow.
Maybe I can start, because I think
Please.
I already mentioned it.
Please, yeah.
If they're using the Google services, there is Google Sites that you can use as a portal, as a board, as a sort of easy way to have an intranet, where you can share all the updates on anything or anything else that is related to Google site. Anyone can create it. It could be HR led, it could be team led, to create sort of this sense of community. The other thing that is obviously really good to have is sort of a project management tool. I've used Asana in the past, but I know there's a lot of companies out there now that are reaching out to companies, which are quite good. And I can't think of a third right now, but if it comes to me, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I would echo that. There's lots of things, again, being advertised via people's networks. So I know we use a lot of kind of whiteboards, that type of thing, which I know lots of companies do now. But there's things that like mural boards, idea boards that you can start to use, and they're often on trial, so like a month's trial. So take advantage of things like that are on a trial basis before you commit to those, because I don't know, it just seems there's a whole plethora of free trials being kind of thrown out there at the moment, obviously with the intent of everyone wanting to buy something, but there's lots and lots of things out there, so that actually we don't lose anything by not being in the office. It can all be virtual.
Fantastic. And I think that's a great conclusion for our webinar. Thanks everyone for joining. We had Toni, Georgieva from Kapten, and Kerry-Anne Fennelly from Digital. Remember, we will have a webinar next week, and you can see today's webinar with an attached article to it on KindLink Global tomorrow. See you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.